Good evening, and welcome to the first meeting of the Public Safety Committee of Fuquay-Varina, the town of Fuquay-Varina. I'm going to call this meeting to order. We have present here tonight, as part of the committee, our board, Commissioner Marilyn Gardner, and we have Commissioner Bill Harris, and myself, I'm serving as the chair, Commissioner Jason Wunsch. I'd like to go ahead and get started, and again, welcome everybody for joining us online. I'm sorry, it's during times that we can't all be here in person. If I can call upon Commissioner Harris to lead us in our invocation.
All right, let us pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this glorious day. We thank you for the opportunity to come together and to discuss such a serious issue in our community. We ask that as we go through these discussions, that you would grant us wisdom and give us the ability, Heavenly Father, to move forward. We pray this. We ask that you would bless the town of Fuquay-Varina and its citizens. Bless each commissioner here, members of the staff and town government. We ask these in thy name. Through Jesus Christ our Lord, we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Commissioner Gardner, if you'll lead us in the pledge.
Please face the flag and join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. I have presented each one of our committee members with a proposed agenda, and so the first matter of business would be to review and approve this agenda, and wanted to see if there was any additions or deletions to this proposed agenda. Tonight, my goal was to set up our some formalities of our committee, to hear from our town attorney, and to have discussions about the future of the committee. And so I would wanted to present the agenda to this committee and see if there is a motion to approve it, or any additions or subtractions.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
I know that this is in committee, but would there be, and I have been asked this too, will there be an opportunity to hear from people who are attending this meeting, who are attending by Zoom?
Yes, I did not build that into this meeting, but in the future meetings, absolutely, there will be an opportunity at the meetings to be able to address our committee.
To hear from the citizens?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I just want to clarify that.
Yes. Do I have a motion to approve this agenda for tonight, March 4th, 2021?
I move that we approve this agenda as presented.
A second.
All those in favor do so by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you. We do not have any minutes yet. We will at the next meeting, but none to approve tonight for March 4th, 2021, as this is the first meeting of our committee. There is no old business to discuss on March 4th, 2021. And while there are no presentations scheduled for March 4th, 2021 in the future, I would anticipate having some very valuable presentations. And we will hear from our town attorney tonight, but I did not have that as a presentation. And so tonight, I wanted to establish the organization of our committee under new business item number 1. And I had some proposals to discuss in terms of when to meet and how frequently to meet. And I wanted to give those proposals and then hear from both of you on whether that would be acceptable to you. One proposal I had was to start off was when to meet. I wanted to suggest the evening of Thursday, as it is not when we have one of our 2 board meetings on a Monday or a Tuesday. It also would be least likely to interfere with people's night of worship, which a lot of times is on Wednesday, and then not run into the weekend. So I was going to propose that we would meet on Thursdays, I was going to propose this time at 7 p.m., allowing people to get through what would traditionally be a dinner hour. And I was going to propose, so I was going to propose Thursday at 7 p.m. In terms of the frequency, given the number of meetings that we may have in this, with this committee and the importance of the committee, then I was going to suggest, and I understand when I say this that it creates a busy next few months because of other meetings that we'll have related to budget and board meetings, but I was going to suggest every 2 weeks that we would meet on the Thursday. It's every other Thursday, starting this Thursday at the 7 p.m. hour, to meet until our work is done with this committee and we have our recommendations. So that would be my, and of course that we would meet here and continue to live stream our meetings in the manner that they're being live streamed tonight for the public to be able to tune in and then later participate in these meetings. And so those would be my recommendations in terms of the frequency of our meetings, the time of our meetings, and how we would disseminate the information. I also wanted to suggest that we be able to, if possible, have these meetings on our website, so that sometimes it's harder to find, meetings back on Facebook, or that people could go to our website and watch. So let's say you tuned in on meeting 4, you could go back and, see what was said tonight, meeting 2, meeting number 3, and you could hear everything that built upon to get to the meeting that we're at now. So I felt like it was very important to be able to have these meetings, if possible, in every possible place that we could put them, since we're not in a place yet with COVID that we can have people in the room among us and with us as we would normally have at these committee meetings. And those are some of the suggestions I had, and wanted to open that up for comment from our board, from our committee members. So.
Actually, Thursdays work for me, but I was just wondering, I know it would take longer, but if it do you have do you have other meetings on Thursdays?
Now, Thursday is good for me. Yeah.
So maybe we could go every other. I was kind of expecting it to be maybe second and, or first and third, second and fourth, something like that, but then that wouldn't be always every other week. But I think that would work with me.
And so the day would work, and then the frequency would work of Thursdays? Okay.
So you're looking at a standing, excuse me, Commissioner Gardner, just for clarification, you're recommending a standard time every second and fourth Thursday?
No, I was just saying that was kind of what I had thought, but I'm good to do every other. I know that would take longer if we do that, rather than just going every other
Thursday. Mm-hmm. Okay.
I was trying to look and see if.
Said it would be March 18th, April 1st, April 15th, April 29th for the next 4 dates after tonight.
Okay.
And I think 7 o'clock that's usually when we meet in some of the other meetings, so I think 7 o'clock is good.
Gives us a chance.
Commissioner Harris, do you like 7 o'clock?
Yeah, on March 18th, I have a commitment that's going to take me about 30 minutes, so I will be coming in, but I'll be after that commitment. Shouldn't take long.
When does that commitment?
On March the 18th at 7.
So, okay. Would we be able to maybe start a little bit later?
I mean, if you choose, yeah, well, yeah.
Like would 7:30 help, or?
Or either earlier, if we expect the meeting not to be as lengthy, either earlier or either at 7:30, that would work.
I would recommend that we perhaps start later. That way, if we have a lot of engagement with the public, or we have, we're not like, pressed for time, where we have to end at this time.
Right.
Maybe we start a little bit later, But would 7:30 be
That'll
sufficient?
work.
Okay,
That'll work for me.
okay,
Should work for me.
okay.
And that would be just for that one date, or
Just
that?
Just for that one
just for
meeting, yeah,
I
then we
already
would
have
revert
something
back to
committed for it.
7 o'clock.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So then I would look for a motion that we meet Thursdays, every other Thursday from here on out at 7 PM with the exception of March 18th where we'll start at 7:30. Do we need to put that in the form of a motion?
Sure, that'd be fine.
Okay, so we'll look for a motion on that.
So move.
Second.
All those in favor of that being our meeting and frequency time, notify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, and then I was just going to inquire from the town if it's possible, and if our committee so would like to see that, if we were able to put copies of the meeting on our town website.
So we are set up to put, obviously, meeting minutes on our town website. We, right now, the way we handle it for our town board, for our planning board, Board of Adjustment, is that we have on our website a link that takes you to where our recordings are hosted on YouTube to be able to see the previous recordings of the meeting. So you can go to our website to find the link, and then you can click on the link and it'll take you to YouTube. Or you just go straight to YouTube and type in Town of Fuquay-Varina, and it'll take you to our landing page as well.
Okay,
But all of our previous recorded meetings are hosted on YouTube for encryption and security purposes, as well as just space purposes.
I was just thinking, you know, but by the time some people may find out, and we may have already been well into meeting, and so they could catch up and see what we've
But
stated.
we'll have links where they can click on, you know, the meeting from, what is today's date? The 4th of March, and then they'll be able to click on the 18th and 1st of April, so forth and so on, and that'll take them to their respective site.
Commissioner Wunsch, I'm kind of slow here. I had one more thing I wanted to say about our schedule. We may, I think, need to state that as we see the need, if there be the need for more meetings, that we would revisit this schedule. We're only going out 4 meetings now, and we would like to reserve the right to.
Well, I was
send
just giving you the dates of those 4 meetings. I wasn't implying that that would be all the meetings or
Yeah.
Well,
too
at
many.
this point, we really don't know exactly
right.
how many we'd be having. Maybe we'll revisit that when we do.
Yeah, that sounds good. And so that is what I wanted to establish under committee organization was, obviously we know where we meet, when we meet, how frequently we meet. And in terms of content, I was going to leave it under our discussion, under discussion to, for the establishment of the committee mission, I had a suggested mission, but I wanted to discuss that obviously with our committee and hear your input. I went and looked at the what was codified about our public safety committee and found from 1977 that it says that the public safety committee shall be composed of at least 3 members appointed by the mayor and shall hear and recommend on matters and problems relating to public safety issues to serve 2 two-year terms during the same term as the incumbent mayor. So that's what we have in place right now, that we could find, if there's anything else out there, that's all that could find in terms of what's codified about the public safety committee.
The Public Safety Committee are all committees, is that,
Just the public safety committee. Yeah.
and do they reference the establishment of the Public Safety Committee and the date it was established?
Yes, looks like 1977.
Actually,
Is that,
No.
am I correct about
No,
that?
that's incorrect.
yeah, it was
Okay.
established on February 5th of 1990.
Yeah.
Oh,
And just an
Okay.
aside to that, that was based on my recommendation.
Oh,
That's why,
okay.
when you said that date, I'm saying, oh, because
You were on the board at that time.
I was on the board, and I
Okay.
made the recommendation that this committee be established, and in fact wrote the mission statement. So,
Okay.
yeah, when you said 77, I knew that
A
was.
little off on the year.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, so I see that now we're 2/5/1990.
Yes,
So it's been around for a little over 31 years now.
Yes.
The committee, okay.
about as long as I have.
And
You were hoping that part was going to be left out, right?
But the mayor's not here to add that. I had thought I
I hear
would.
you thought we wouldn't say that tonight.
well, no, I appreciate that history and appreciate you doing that because that's enabled us to be here tonight. That
Yes.
you
Yes.
did that, so I appreciate what you did. I had sent out not too long ago to both of you. I don't know if you got it or not. I had sent just a suggested mission of which I would read to the public. The Public Safety Committee is tasked in the town code, which I just read, with hearing and making recommendations on matters and problems relating to public safety issues. The Public Safety Committee's purpose for meetings at this time is to gain further understanding about how community and law enforcement relate and identify opportunities to support community policing principles and strengthen relationships. So I don't know if you both received that, but that is something that I wanted to start the discussion with, of establishing a mission. I felt like it was important to elaborate, in my opinion. I want to hear from the committee a little bit on, I know we do have shall hear and recommend on matters and problems relating to public safety issues. My just adding to gain further understanding about how community and law enforcement relate and identify opportunities to support community policing principles and strengthen relationships. And so at this time, under new business 2, I wanted to discuss this establishment of this mission. So,
And that is for these meetings that we're having at this time. This is not a mission,
no,
not the blanket mission going forward.
no, and because now that I know Commissioner Harris did a fantastic job back in 1990 of laying out why we have this Public Safety Committee, and if the committee would like to stick with that, which is all-encompassing, of what it does, or wishes to have a more narrow focus than I had suggested, a possible narrow focus to our purpose of our committee meeting. And so that's why I wanted to open up the discussion.
Commissioner Wunsch, could you read it one more time?
Yeah.
Please?
The Public Safety Committee is tasked in the town code with hearing and making recommendations on matters and problems relating to public safety issues. The Public Safety Committee's purpose for meetings at this time is to gain further understanding about how community and law enforcement relate and identify opportunities to support community policing principles and strengthen relationships.
I think that sounds pretty good. Commissioner Harris, do you have?
Well, one of the initial ideas about this committee was that in the future, from the standpoint of the intention, was to make sure that we kept the lines of communication open between the community and law enforcement. And not knowing at that time that we would have the issues we have today with law enforcement and the community, it was suggested that if there were any issues as it relates to public safety, that there would be an identified committee of commissioners who would concentrate and focus on those particular issues. And it just so happened the recent incidents that have occurred have brought about the need to have this committee to become basically resurrected and to address those issues related to the relationship between law enforcement and the community, because I think it's going to be critical that this community feel that they are heard and that this committee is a neutral committee. None of us are law enforcement.
No.
So we can look very objectively at the issues relative to law enforcement and have the citizens be heard in regards to their image and their image of law enforcement, their concerns about law enforcement, and hopefully out of these kinds of conversations that we will open up to the community, we can have some recommendations to improve the overall law enforcement work here in Fuquay-Varina, because I think it's important that the citizens feel that they can be heard, as well as our police department have an opportunity to get feedback objectively. Because oftentimes I think when you have issues with law enforcement and the citizens, somewhere along the line, the communication gets blocked and people don't hear each other. And a lot of what happens, especially in communities of color, is that there's not an avenue where things can be expressed in a way where people feel that they are being heard. And I think if we as a committee, as we continue down the road, if we can have a means of having people feeling free that they can be heard, then I think we can establish a collaboration of stakeholders in the community, and can have a good opportunity to have law enforcement to understand what people are really, really saying. It's not necessarily against law enforcement, but it's just that people want to be heard in regards to their interactions with law enforcement and what it means. So took a long time to say that, but that's part of the intent of this committee, the creation of this committee. And I see that the committee now, we have a great opportunity to move this issue forward, because we can be objective and we can have this be a process where citizens can come and we can listen objectively. This can be something that can be good for Fuquay-Varina if we give it a chance.
Do you want, just some of my thoughts, and thank you, Commissioner Harris. Do you want to initially go with what we have for the Public Safety Committee that you wrote in terms of the purpose, and then I circulate to both of you the more narrow focus that I have presented, and then readdress that at the next meeting?
And your narrow focus, again, is to gain further understanding about how community and law enforcement relate?
Yes.
I think that's excellent. That's number one. And then number two, identify opportunities to support community policing principles and strengthen relationship?
Yes, sir.
I like that.
Okay.
I think that's very
Okay.
good. Yeah.
Then, thank you. Then would anybody want to make a motion to adopt that as our mission? I kind of saw it as a combination of what you wrote, and I didn't know you wrote it, so that's really neat. And then just a little bit of an addition. So if someone would like to make a motion on that, then we can adopt that and then put that in our minutes for the next time.
I'll move that we adopt the mission statement based on the recommendations from the chair, that the Public Safety Committee's purpose for meeting is to gain further understanding about how the community and law enforcement relate, and identify opportunities to support community policing principles and strengthen relationships.
Now,
That would be our
when
mission statement.
Commissioner Wunsch read what he had, he said, at this time was in there, the mission for our meetings at this time is, so I'm just want to be clear, is this a mission for, that will be the mission for our meetings over this next 4 or however many weeks we are meeting?
That's
Yes.
what I was thinking.
I think it should be clear that it's not in replacement of the standing, the
Yeah.
earlier defined,
point.
more
Good
generic,
That is a very good point.
open to cover, the more generic one. This
Yeah.
is for the specific time that we're meeting now, correct?
Yes,
Yes.
That was a good point of clarification.
good.
Not to change what Commissioner Harris drafted, that staying just a little more narrow and focused for this, like you said.
So I like that you said at that time. However, we need to put and state it so that it's understood that this is the mission for our meetings.
For this,
At
this
this
is our
time.
charge
Yes.
for
Yes.
this committee, yes, right
And
now.
and with that clarification, I second.
Okay, all those in favor of this motion notify by saying aye.
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 Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
I've noticed on, that we've had some comments on the live YouTube stream that there's some difficulty hearing, so if all board members will just make sure you speak into your
Okay.
your mics real good, that way the can
Okay.
hear clearly.
Okay. Apologize to the public. Sometimes when I'm turning around, I was getting away from the microphone. And just for a little recap for the help of the public, or for the public, we have so far established our committee organization that we would meet on Thursday nights, every other Thursday, starting this Thursday, and then every other Thursday at 7 p.m. Commissioner Harris had asked if we could meet at 7:30 on March 18th, that being the only Thursday that we would start at 7:30. So for clarity purposes, next Thursday, we would start at 7:30. We talked about that we would meet here. We would continue to broadcast these meetings as they've been broadcasted. And we talked about establishing a mission, and a motion was just made and seconded to establish the Public Safety Committee as tasked in the town code with hearing and making recommendations on matters and problems relating to public safety issues. The Public Safety Committee's purpose for meeting at this time is to gain further understanding about how community and law enforcement relate and identify opportunities to support community policing principles and strengthen relationships. So we talked about how Commissioner Harris had drafted the original Public Safety Committee purpose and language that was done February 5th, 1990, 31 years ago, and we just added to that. I mentioned how in the discussion section I wanted to talk about some ideas for this committee and presentations and so forth. And that is just a recap of what we've done so far in this meeting. And I apologize, I will be sure to talk more into the microphone so that the public can hear what I am saying. The next item of business, number 3, is I asked that we have a report by our town attorney for parameters of what we can do as a committee, things we need to be aware of as a committee, personnel issues. And so I would call on our town attorney, James Adcock, to make a presentation at this time.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm James Adcock. I'm town attorney. I'm going to discuss a couple matters tonight that for the board's benefit or for the committee's benefit and also for the benefit of the public. I'm going to kind of break this up into 2 parts. I'm going to talk about our internal policies and procedures, what happens when we have a complaint or an issue, and then I'll discuss public records law authority issues under statute that we deal with, and I think that'll be a good way to start forward. So police officers here in Fuquay, they're employees of the town. Like any other town employee, there's a policy and procedure manual that applies to them. There's also procedures within the police department that are specific to police officers. So a complaint is made, alleged misconduct, rule violation. Any complaint is accepted by policy. They're not just dismissed. All of them are accepted and they're all investigated. And complaints are accepted through members of the public submitting a citizen complaint form in person, by phone, online, by email, by handwritten letter, or anonymously under the policy. A supervisor may also take a complaint from the individual in person, and employees may also file internal complaints. At this time, the chief of police assigns responsibility for conducting an investigation. This may be a department supervisor or the designated professional standards investigator. Interviews are conducted of all individuals, witnesses, involved employees. The investigation also includes the review of all evidence, including body camera, in-car video. Complaints are investigated within 10 working days unless an extension is granted by the chief, with the expectation that the investigation be completed within 30 days. That's the parameter for these investigations. And updates are given every 7 days during the process. So once the investigation is complete, it's forwarded to the chief with a recommendation. The chief of police makes a final disposition on the case, and the chief may contact human resources, legal resources, or other resources in determining the appropriate actions from the review of the facts in the case. And the findings may include the following dispositions: sustained, not sustained, unfounded, proper conduct, policy failure, or other, such as a civil matter. And any internal disciplinary action, human resources and the town manager are contacted to discuss formal disciplinary action, including reprimands, termination, under our personnel policy. If any complaints are sustained and disciplinary action is warranted, the town policy and procedures are followed. Additional actions that may occur are counseling, training, developing new policies, or modifying existing policies. If criminal violations occur, a town employee commits a criminal act, then a consultation occurs with the district attorney, Wake County District Attorney's Office, for criminal prosecution. And records of these internal affairs, professional standards type complaints are maintained according to North Carolina records retention laws and personnel privacy laws. And these disciplinary actions are filed with the Human Resources Department here at the town. And at the conclusion of all these investigations, a letter is sent to the complainant, and the involved employees are also notified regarding the disposition. So this is the procedure of what we have right now. I just think it's good for the benefit of the committee and for the public to understand that that is our internal procedure. And our general policy and procedure follows that for regular town employees as well, a similar procedure. So in that, we reference some about public records laws. As a town, we're a public entity. The records we keep, the vast majority of those are public records. It's a very broad definition of what is a public record, and then there's a variety of exceptions to the public records rules. And the two most common ones for law enforcement type issues are the personnel exception and the criminal investigation exception. And these are set forth in statute. I can talk about personnel to start with. Personnel records are not public records, but there are a variety of exceptions to that rule as well. These things kind of start at the macro and they narrow down. Things that are public records are name, age, date of employment, the terms of any contract by which the employee is employed, current position, title, salary, date and amount of any increase or decrease in salary, date and type of promotion, demotion, transfer, suspension, separation, or other change in position, date and general description of the reasons for each promotion with that municipality, date and type of each dismissal, suspension, or demotion for disciplinary reasons taken by the municipality. If the disciplinary action was a dismissal, a copy of the written notice of the final decision of the municipality setting forth the specific acts or omissions that are the basis of the dismissal in the office to which the employee is currently assigned. Other issues that are in the, or other records that are in the employee file are not public records. Those are the disclosable records in the file, those that I just listed. That's one of the main prongs of the exception to the public records law. The other is records of criminal investigations conducted by public law enforcement agencies. That there are some limited records that can be released from those. They're also set forth in statute, and those are listed out. If an ongoing investigation is going, the time, date, location, and nature of a violation or apparent violation of the law, that can be released. The name, sex, age, address, employment, and alleged violation of law of a person arrested, charged, or indicted. The circumstances surrounding an arrest, including the time and place of the arrest, whether the arrest involved resistance, possession or use of weapons, or pursuit, and a description of any items seized in connection with the arrest. Contents of 911 or other emergency telephone calls received, except for contents that reveal the natural voice, name, address, telephone number, or other information that may identify the caller, victim, or witness. The contents of communications between or among employees of public law enforcement agencies that are broadcast over public airways, and the name, sex, age, and address of complaining witnesses. So as you can tell, we are constrained by statute what we can release as part of a criminal investigation and as part of an employee's personnel records. And there, on the statutory authorizations, you know, people have discussed, and some towns have adopted these citizen boards. A lot of them are advisory in nature. The ability to have an effective review board is limited by all of these public records issues that we've talked about, because they wouldn't have access to personnel records. They wouldn't have access to criminal investigative materials. And more importantly, they wouldn't have the ability to subpoena anyone, because that ability is not given by statute. And there have been some attempts to codify some of these review type boards in statute, and those have not passed. I know there was one back in 2017 that was put through, and my understanding is that people are trying to push some of that through the legislature. Because as a town, as we know, we have to have statutory authorization in order to do things such as these review type committees. And I just wanted to give a little bit of detail on that and kind of where the state of the law is right now on those. They're severely limited by statute what we're actually authorized to do. And there's no specific statutory authority to adopt those. In a lot of towns, they're more advisory in nature, from what I could tell just in my research. And if the committee has any questions, that was just an overview. I thought it'd be beneficial.
I have a couple of questions. And the first one is I hope I heard you right, the personnel exception. If there is, and let me just see if I can clarify it by giving an example. If there is clear malfeasance by a staff member, non-law enforcement, it's pretty clear what the process can be, correct?
There's still a human resources procedure.
There's a human resource procedure. When there's malfeasance when it comes to a law enforcement officer, what's the difference there?
I think the main difference is you're under that police policy where that internal affairs investigation is conducted by that officer in the police department that's designated by the chief versus through the human resources department like a regular town employee would. I think that's the distinction in the two.
Okay, so that policy internally within the police department is not necessarily statutory. It's just an internal policy of police practice?
I think it's a best practice that's similar across, you know, from town to town, and it's adopted pursuant to some professional standards.
Okay.
But it's not codified specifically in a statute.
Okay, okay, all right.
And there's reasons for keeping it separate. I mean, obviously because you have investigative elements to these things and ongoing criminal investigations. If they went over to the human resources department versus internal, you know, the ability to release those type of items, it could limit your investigation if you still are part of an ongoing criminal investigation.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the concerns, and this was brought out during the barbershop rap sessions that we had with the police department and citizens, was the fact that when you do have an incident of police malfeasance where an officer makes a mistake, or you know, there's an abuse of power or force or whatever the situation is, the citizens for that moment don't have an opportunity to get any impression that there's any kind of response from management. And you know, perhaps that policy is a policy that creates sort of anxiety if a person feels that they have a complaint or a grievance against law enforcement. There's that gap there where it appears as if nothing is happening. And oftentimes, if something could be created to give some feedback or some explanation or some action that can be taken, similar to what would happen with a normal human resource process, we might be able to engage the community earlier in the process by giving them what information they could be given at that particular point. You know, I mean, I'm just, committee members, I'm just thinking that might be something that we might need to look at, because clearly human resources, if you have a staff person or employee that goes out and does something so egregious, I mean, that person perhaps could be fired on the spot and then dealt with. But with a law enforcement officer, it seems like the internal policies already, you know, they sort of inhibit the speed of taking some kind of personnel action. That would be what, you know, I would be up for discussion about if the committee sees that as a valid point.
Right, and their policies, I mean, typically these things are handled within 10 working days, so that's a pretty quick process, but it could be extended depending on the detail of the investigation.
Okay, yeah, okay, that's just something for consideration. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so I think I might have misunderstood. So I thought it was 30 days for.
That's if an extension is granted. You've got out to 30. That's the parameter.
Okay,
You got the
but
goal
ordinarily it is
policy.
expected to be completed in 10 days.
Right.
Within 10 days.
10 work.
I think that's pretty speedy too. I mean, I think that's acceptable. Do you think that's 10 days is acceptable, Bill?
Well, I think, you know, as far as normal practice, that may be, but when you have the community in uproar, when you have emotions burning and you have a lot of tension built up, I think looking at that time frame for particular issues might, if we could shorten that time frame or speed that process up and give feedback as soon as possible, it might create an opportunity for better understanding. That would be my response to what I've heard so far. And the goal is for better understanding and giving an opportunity for there to be a conversation and for questions to be answered when it comes to concerns from the public who may feel that there has been an issue with law enforcement. I think that might be something, if we could, I mean, I don't know how flexible we would be in looking at that, but that would create, I think, more improved communication. That's just, you know, that would be my thought on that.
I'm just concerned that if you want a thorough investigation before conclusions are drawn and answers are given, it seems to me, I don't know, I just wouldn't feel competent to limit that, to further limit that. That, you know, to limit. I mean, because you don't have all the information necessarily. You might, but 10 days is. I mean, when you think of you know, the process for investigating something like this, I don't think you want it something that you're speeding through. I don't know. I just.
Well, I agree. I agree with you. I think the investigation should be thorough, very thorough. I don't think that would serve anybody if there was just a rush job. But if it's something that can be done to help communication and understanding, I mean, and I don't know the extent of a particular investigation, but it would seem to me it would be raised to the level of a top priority, wherein this 10-day period, it must be a recommendation somewhere. It's not necessarily carved out in stone that it has to be 10 days, but perhaps if it were considered top priority, perhaps that period for particular situations could be decreased if that's workable and not impact having a thorough investigation. You understand? The goal is to have a thorough investigation, and also the goal is to not have the public walking around questioning what happened, why, when, where, and what. If those kinds of questions can be answered as expeditiously as possible, then I think that will minimize, this air of what are they trying to hide, distrust, those kinds of things that have a tendency to seep into conversations when people don't have enough information or they feel as if they aren't being heard. So if 10 days is a policy, we could discuss, and does it have to be 10 days? And if it's less than 10 days, would it impact the thoroughness of an investigation? I think that would be the question. And I don't have that answer. I'm just for the discussion part, I'm just raising up this as a possibility to improve relationships.
Well, I think one of the keys that we'll be talking about and have been talking about is communication.
Right.
I think, communication as to, I hope through this process, people will be more educated about the different things that in the just a standard investigation that take time. There's certain things that, what if another municipality's involved? What if things that just automatically are going to take more time? Maybe just putting out a statement about this is going to take, maybe communication would be a way to. I understand what you're saying, because when they get out in the public and they get on social media, and then they're not facts sometimes, they're perceptions. And I think having the true, the communication of the process and, everybody understanding would go a long way toward that. And you're right, if all we know is that it could take up to 10 days, then that's upsetting. That that's you feel apprehension and anxiety, that just not knowing why does this take 10 days. But if we have a little better understanding, and hopefully in this process we're going to figure out ways to gain that.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's important that it's a balance. The public needs information, but then you also have the due process rights of the employee too, because the officers are employees of the town. So they are entitled to an investigation and the procedure that's followed. You don't want to rush to judgment. We want to have the facts and have it investigated.
Certainly.
So there is a balance there.
Certainly. Yes, I agree.
We don't need to lose sight of that, because they may have acted incorrectly or correctly, but I think that needs to come out in the investigation.
Yeah.
And I think communicating on both sides that we're trying to be fair to both sides in the process, as our attorney said, that there's also due process on the side of the officer, and it's an investigation, and communicating that obviously it's going to be done with all deliberate speed, but not compromising the thoroughness and fairness of it, and understanding that that if our policy is 10 days, that it's not going to exceed 10 days, so there will be an answer. There will be a resolution. It's not something that's going to drag on and on and on and on.
Except it could be extended to 30 days.
But it could be, it could be 30 days if it's something that is more complex, or, as Commissioner Gardner said, involves multiple
agencies,
law enforcement agencies,
or entities, or the court system. There may be.
But I would one of my concerns would be the fairness to both sides, and not overlooking that, and making sure it's thorough, the investigation, that, as both of you have said, and Commissioner Gardner pointed out, that nothing is taken away from because it didn't get done in 12 days or 15 days, but, and the chief that we have now, Chief Fonstock, is very good about communication with the public to the extent that she is able to communicate via social media and letting the public know what's going on, as well as with situations where there's crime in the community, and she's been phenomenal with that piece of communication, and so and I think all of that is very important. So, like you said, the community does know that things are being taken seriously, they're being addressed, and that really comments can't be made about the situation for fairness to both sides until the thorough investigation is complete to allow everyone due process. And so those would be my remarks.
Because we're talking about strengthening relationships with the community, I'd just like to make a comment that I understand what due process is, but sometimes people who are impacted by law enforcement, they don't understand that concept. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I think that's important that we understand that when people are impacted by law enforcement, and from the standpoint that the interaction might be improper, that there are two sides of it from the standpoint that sometimes people they don't understand due process. They only understand that I've been impacted or my family member has been impacted, and what are you all going to do? And if you try to tell someone who has had a negative experience with law enforcement, I mean, they are not going to understand due process. And I think that that's an issue, some kind of way, notwithstanding it's 10 days, 5 days, that we have to perhaps be creative and come up with some kind of way we can communicate to the public that we are working on this, we are doing something, this is what we're doing, and I think I would love for it to be a concerted voice from the town of Fuquay, not necessarily the police chief, but from the town in general, that we are doing something. Because if you look at historically throughout the country, whenever you've had the issue with police misconduct or questions about police conduct, you have this period of void where nothing is being said. And the public gets in uproar because nothing is being said. But it's under investigation. We're going to go through due process. Well, how do you explain that to a mother who's lost their son, or a mother who feels that they have been mistreated? How do they don't get that? So I think it's important if we're going to strengthen, and I'm talking about strengthening relationships here now. I'm not talking against the police or anything like that, but my purpose for making this comment is to try to come up with some mechanism where we can strengthen the relationship. And the only way I know to strengthen relationships, period, is communication. And if we come up with some method, some way to communicate with the public that we're on this, we hear you as elected leaders, we're concerned about you, this is what's going on, rather than pulling back and not saying anything. And Facebook is not, to me, a good medium to communicate, because oftentimes, you know, it's not factual and people become polarized when things are posted on Facebook. It's either one or the other. Even the language that we use, us and them, you know, we against them. I mean, those kinds of things often comes out of Facebook when it's posted. So we take leadership, when we can create some kind of way of communicating that we're on top of this, we're concerned about it, we hear you. I think that might be one way we can strengthen the relationship wherein people feel like they aren't being heard and recognized. That's my whole that's my whole purpose for coming up with this idea.
I had a reaction and a comment. I think that one way that can one way that can be accomplished, and that is, I feel, being done in Fuquay-Varina, is to have a department that is approachable, that you feel like, for example, with the police chief, she's out in the community a lot, and she's engaging with the public. And because at the end of the day, you've got to feel like you can approach the department to be able to talk to them, and you've got to be able to express your concerns, and then feel like your concerns are going to be welcome. And Chief Fonstock, I've seen in the time that she's been here, nearly 6 years, has tried very hard to engage with the public so that if they have a concern, that they can come to her, or she will reach out to the public. Or, for example, if somebody has been, or let's say somebody has expressed that they've been affected in some way, that they feel that they can approach them, and that they're reached out to, and that is something that definitely I've seen our chief work on, that we can continue to do in Fuquay-Varina, that with our officers being out into the community, our officers engaging in the community, that we can be able to build that environment, that trust where you can engage. If you've got a concern or a problem, you can engage the leadership of the department, and then the department can give you the feedback to the extent that they're allowed to give feedback, by the parameters of the law, that they can give back. And I guess kind of going back to old school, of before the days of social media. And I see the chief doing that a lot. Obviously with COVID, it's kind of hard to do a lot of the things that she's been doing because of the inability to be near each other. But continuing to do those things, I think, builds up trust with law enforcement and the leadership of law enforcement, and that's, I think, one way to be able to engage in this dialogue where the public can, feel like they can ask questions like, what is being done, or here's my concerns, here's how I feel like I've been wronged, or here's what I feel like you're doing well, and having that rapport and that trust. And that's something that I've seen the chief work very hard on. That's something that I feel would be very valuable to our town to continue, and that our board support that and give, continue to support the efforts of reaching out to the community and programming, and some of the things that, many of the things that have been done already, and building upon that, so that we can have that engagement and build that trust and build that feeling of being able to mention things and there not be any type of bad feelings or repercussions. And that's what I see being done, and that's what I encourage to continue, and that as a board and as a committee, we can support that and help that to grow. And that would be my thought on people in the public members who feel like they have a concern and they want to know what's going on or have engagement. One of the benefits of social media now is that you can reach a lot of people at one time, and you can share things like you never could before. The negatives are, like Commissioner Harris brought out, though. It has its positives, it clearly has its negatives. I know from doing a social media page that you get the other side of where things can go, be very divisive, and people can have opinions one way or the other, and sometimes it gets to, and I'm not saying that our chief obviously doesn't do that and makes a post, but then sometimes you can get comments where confrontation can happen. It happens on my page, it happens on Facebook and other social media sites. But the benefit is you can reach a lot of people, and people, even if they haven't met you or they've never come in contact with you, they kind of feel like they know you. And I feel like that the benefit out of it, even though there are negatives, it builds up that trust that is so important with the public. And so those would be some of my thoughts. And I just, as a board and as a committee, want to do everything I can to help accomplish that and give the support there, and as well as being a good listener and hearing. And one big component that I wanted to discuss when we get to our committee member discussion is having a very large component of this being listening to the public and hearing the public and hearing what concerns are. They may be concerns, they may be things that they feel like that are outstanding that they would like to see continue. They have suggestions, and so letting the public know that we listen, we care, and because we do, and that's what we were called to do as public servants, to listen and care and be concerned about the things that go on in our community. So those would be my thoughts.
Good.
Well, I would like to thank our town attorney for being here tonight and going through the statutory
Yes.
implications of all of this, because it's education for me, and I think, any way that we can figure out how to communicate understanding of some of these limitations that direct how we have to handle things, how our town has to handle things.
Yes.
Would be important. The barbershop rap sessions, I would love to see those when we can someday. And another time when we can gather again. I think they serve a very good purpose. But in terms of, I wish we could have more attention paid to this in our schools. I wish for young people, there is a law and justice class at the high school, but everybody doesn't take it. Everybody doesn't get to take it, and lots of people want to or used to. But some special programs from time to time, just to inform those young people about due process and what that means, and or just if there were some fun ways we could, Teen Day was used like that somewhat, and I think that as it has kind of. Particularly with COVID, has kind of played out now, but maybe some new way of engaging our young people that can be informative for them in terms of this kind of information that the town attorney has given us tonight.
Yes, yeah, I think so too. That's a great idea.
And thank you for that very helpful and informative presentation. And so now, under the discussion, I feel the discussion portion of our agenda will always be important, but tonight extremely important, because I wanted to talk about some ideas I had for this committee under the meetings that we're having right now and why we've been brought together. I had just some things I wanted to publicly share and then get impact, and then I wanted to hear from all of you to hear your thoughts. One of the things I thought there were several things that could be helpful to us as teaching tools for our committee in terms of presentations. One thing that I thought that was important in terms of relations between law enforcement and the community is hearing from our League of Municipalities and hearing and getting their wisdom and their advice and their suggestions and their expertise. And I know, Commissioner Harris, you have been involved again for many years with the League, and And I could really use some help with that. I would love to reach out to the league to present to us on this topic and have a presentation from the league about ways that and tools and methods that have been used to strengthen relationships in this area. And so I definitely would like to call upon, I mean, they're there, they function, they do good work, and I feel like that would be very helpful. I was also interested in hearing about what other communities do to in this area in strengthening relationships between law enforcement and the community, methods they've used, things they've done that have been successful, and perhaps things that we can learn from them, we can implement. I see this as there's always room to build upon all the good things that are being done in this area, and so this would be another way that we could look at this, look at these methods that are being done. And I also feel very strongly about hearing from our police chief in Fuquay-Varina, Chief Fonstock. She has 30 years experience in law enforcement, and she, in my opinion, over these last nearly 6 years, now almost 6 years in June, has done a tremendous amount of work in the area of building relationships between the community and law enforcement. And that has been through programming, that has been through reaching out to all of our community. And it has also been in training. That's one thing that I didn't want to overlook, is in training our department, her officers, and also in the hiring process. So there's been a number of areas that she, not just in programming with the community, but within the department itself, to equip officers and communicate with the public in an effort to strengthen these relationships, and then in an effort also to build a more diverse police force, law enforcement, and having a force that reflects our community, having more people of color, having more women, having a more diverse force, and to hear about all these things that our chief has done in both the hiring process and personnel training and things how she's reached out to the community, but also, not stopping there, but also what she would like to do in the future and how we can help. In other words, how, Chief Fonstock, can we be a further resource to you as a committee and a board to help continue the good work you've done over these last 6 years in this area of strengthening relationships, and how can we partner with you? And I wanted to say to the board that I feel this is important to do in our first half of our meeting rather than at the end, because to build and strengthen relationships with law enforcement, I feel, is not a monologue but a dialogue, meaning it's talking back and forth and it's listening. And so I feel like it's very important, in order to analyze and for the public to hear how to get even better, to hear what's already being done, to hear what has been done, what's going on now, and what is already being planned and implemented for the future, but also this is what I would like to be, this is what I would love to do if I was able to do it, if I had the resources to do it. So, and I feel like that would help with our listening to the public and the public to know that, okay, this is something that's been done. This is something that they're currently doing. This is something that they would like to do in the future. That they would hear this, and also to be able to understand some of the challenges in hiring, some of the, and the extensive things that are done for personnel training. I have listened to that, and I found it very valuable, and I think it would be very valuable for the public to know that as we listen to the public and get their valuable feedback. And so those are two presentations, one from our chief and from the league, and then discuss how we would go about getting ideas from other communities. And then I felt like it was very important to have at least two meetings where we solely focus on public input and feedback, that we can hear from the public, that it is communicated to the public that we do want to hear from you, that we are not judging you by what you say, that this is a forum where you can be listened to, respected, and that we will hear you and then discuss that as a committee as we put together recommendations from the board. So I think it's very important to get public input and feedback. I just feel like if the public can get a better understanding of what's already happening and what is currently, what's happening, and what is planned for the future, then that will help that process. And then I saw us putting together our recommendations based on our discussions, based on the presentations, based on our consideration of public input, into recommendations to our full board, to our town board that we can make. And I feel like I would recommend to our committee that this is a very thorough process where we've heard from a number of people, including and not minimizing our public. That's extremely important, and that we put together these recommendations that we can then give to our board. In terms of number of meetings, I had suggested about 8 meetings that we would have. So this committee would operate for about 4 months. And over that period of 4 months, we would go through these things. One of the things last thing I wanted to say, and then I want to listen, is I think it's very important if we're going to have this extensive public feedback that we need to get the word out to the public. And one of the things I've learned from Commissioner Harris is that not everybody has the internet, not everybody is, on social media or can, they may not know about these meetings, but I would certainly want to make sure that as many people as possible as we're moving in, especially as we get into the public input, where we're focusing on public input, that people know. So I would encourage those who are listening to this meeting tonight to spread the word in your houses of worship, in meetings that you go to be able to bring people who may be interested in this, to be able to communicate, these ideas to us and know about it. And so I know our town is doing a good job of getting the word out. I'm certainly trying to share it on my social media page, but I also realize that it's bigger than just that in terms of getting the word out. And so I contacted the chamber and talked to Ms. Davis and about getting the word out, and as much as we can get the word out so that the community can know what we're doing and can participate in the manner that we have to participate. Unfortunately, with COVID, that we can't. I wish we could all be together, but that's not possible at this time. But public can still communicate with us and participate. And so, and I would encourage all of us to communicate that to the public so that we can get the feedback from this process. Those would be my comments, and would now open it up for discussion and would love to hear from our committee members.
I would especially like to hear from Commissioner Harris concerning the participation from the North Carolina League of Municipalities, because I know that he has co-chaired their efforts in the area of social justice recently, and I'm sure you have some really good information on how that might be helpful for us.
Well, as far as the social justice and the racial equity committee, if there's an invitation from the town for the committee staff person to come and make a presentation, I mean, that would be helpful. The league also has a, I think it's a law enforcement chief advisory committee that works with police chiefs throughout the state in regards to training standards and training efforts. And they may be a resource when it comes to method and tools to strengthen the relationship, as well as the staff that's working with racial equity to talk about racial equity as it relates to interactions with the community and the police. So, I mean, those are two resources that can be utilized if we were to request them.
Do you think it would be appropriate and feasible with time limits to have a joint presentation on one evening that we could hear from maybe possibly representatives from both of those areas in one of our meetings? Or
well, I would have to check with the lead director and just to see if he can make that happen. That would be his staff, and they would be directed to come and to make presentations. But that's something that is workable. I think that would be a good thing to have maybe one presentation one evening and another presentation another evening, but those two presentations I think would be valuable. Yeah.
I think so too. And I think that would be good to have early on, just because there will be also some information there about what other communities are doing.
Yes.
That would be one source. And then I want to hear more ideas on how, I've got our town manager has some ideas about how we can find out what other communities are doing.
Sure. Well, the League of Municipalities is a great resource, and we look to them quite often to assist in providing resources on benchmarking to other communities. Certainly, there's a network of city managers and law enforcement professionals that can provide input and guidance on this subject as well. And the UNC School of Government has some good resources as well on these types of matters that we can look to as a resource and try to provide some information back into this committee for your review.
So you could help us put together some kind of presentation.
I'm your town manager, and I'm always here to help the committee and board in any way you would like for me to.
You can make it happen, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you think, just for clarification, do you think as a matter of protocol that you could contact Paul, or should I contact Paul?
I would recommend that I contact him.
I was thinking so as well.
Yes, sir.
That would be probably better.
Yes, sir.
Coming from you as opposed to me as a committee member.
I'd be happy to do that.
Oh, yeah, okay, good, good.
So you could make both of those. I mean, would that be the School of Government? You would make that contact too?
I can make all of those contacts. Yes, ma'am. I'm your staff liaison for this committee, and I'm happy to help pull that information together and those resources together.
Good, wonderful.
I think those resources would be a great way, certainly for this committee to begin our work.
Good.
Yeah, I think presentations at the beginning are just very helpful. Commissioner Gardner, did you want to give any other feedback on what you would like to see in terms of the committee do and presentations or anything of that nature, anything that's been mentioned?
Well, I liked all of the things you recommended. I think they're all pieces and parts of this that we need to explore thoroughly before we are ready to make recommendations. So, especially the input from the public, I think that's critical. And certainly, and our police chief, I think that's just part of the part of the picture because. We know she's done a lot of work in communications since she came in this 6 years. But I think a lot of perhaps we have people that would like to hear more about the training, the things that our police department is doing to face some of these issues and train the officers. So yes, I think the police chief coming, and at least 2 meetings for the public impact. I think that's for public input. I'm sorry. I think that's 2 meetings would be great for that. So how many meetings are we up to now?
1, 2, 3.
Okay, if we have,
5,
we would
6,
have.
7.
We're contacting the league about the possibility of doing 2
presentations, yes.
2 presentations.
And I would just recommend, I mean, it's okay, it's good to have a goal of number of meetings and time frame for which you want to try to report out of this committee, but I wouldn't necessarily try to cap it like you spoke to earlier, Commissioner Gardner. I think, as this process evolves, there may be other things that you want to discuss and consider. So I think having the goal of a time frame, 4 months, 8 meetings is fine, but I wouldn't recommend that you try to put yourself in a corner to that.
We just need, I think, maybe because some of these people, if we're having other people come in, we have to work with their schedules too.
Right.
So I think we maybe need to have some kind of, try to schedule ahead 2 or 3 times so that people can plan their schedules and that kind of thing. You think?
I'm good with that.
We already talked about how to find out what the other communities are doing. Okay, I think all my questions that I was thinking about in listening to your suggestions, which I think are all really good. Chairman Wunsch, I think for us talking about these things too, and we know that there are hopefully people listening to this meeting tonight. I think from the beginning it would be good if we, if someone has some input they want on, any presentations they think ought to be part of this process, that we should create a way for them to put forth those suggestions.
And one
That's
way.
a very good point.
One way we could, I thought, was, and would love to hear from you, is, Commissioner Harris had asked about, would we hear from the public prior to, these public input meetings? And it could be that at the beginning of the meeting, like we do with town board meetings, people can come to us and make comments to, prior to our meeting commencing, maybe they have comments about how meetings are going, or they've got suggestions, things that they feel like they would like to see addressed, or maybe they just like the way it's going. And so maybe that's one idea, one possibility, one idea, not to obviously to go into close to any extent of what we would do, and for example, a meeting number 4 or 5 where we would have public input and feedback, but to as a way for the public to feel in touch with us, during our initial meetings, and to give us feedback. I mean, if because we're going to have a more extensive public input feedback opportunity, there could also be, like we do at board meetings, a time limit on it so that we can get to because we got presenters coming and certainly don't want to keep them waiting so that they can go and make their presentations. But that's one way we can engage with the public, but also maybe there's another mechanism we can use for them to communicate to us that we all can receive. Certainly for one thing, they can email us, and we can communicate that way. I mean, they can email us and give us their ideas and suggestions and.
Well, if they have access to the
Right.
internet.
That's what I was thinking as I was saying that. I was thinking, but you got to have access to that.
I just think, wherever we advertise our meetings, we need to, if we're going to listen, we need to be listening all the time, I think.
Yeah.
I do
So
too. I agree.
I say where we advertise our meetings, if they have suggestions, let them send them like that. I'm afraid if we did, I don't know, I'm excited about 2 full meetings for public input, but if we schedule, for instance, someone from the league to come, and then we had a number of people who wanted to weigh in on public comment that night, and they could, we would, if we used our town board meetings as an example and used 3 minutes, it could really cut into the time for a speaker who has come here from another area. So I'm not sure that would be the most courteous and effective way to handle our speakers. But I think we need to from the beginning of this process, after tonight, have a way for the public to communicate to us with us that is ongoing, so that they can be, if they have some suggestions, it may help us set this schedule of meetings
I agree.
and what we do at each meeting. So I think wherever we put it out, if they've got some way to communicate, we give them a way to do it electronically, or we, any other suggestions anybody has for ways people can weigh in, because I think we should be listening through this process.
I do too. I wholeheartedly agree, and perhaps through this meeting, similar to what we do with the town board, to give people an opportunity to call in and give us some feedback. I think that's a good way to sort of check if we're headed in the right direction as far as what we want to do. And I'd like the idea of 3 to 4 minutes, that there be ongoing public participation, an opportunity for the public to participate as we continue to go along. Because
That
feedback
wasn't
would
exactly what I was suggesting, because I think, Bill, if we have a guest speaker from outside of town, and we don't limit, if we have the open public comment time, I think we need to find a way for them to communicate with us outside of that meeting, rather than because it could get lengthy. It could become our public input time that we've got scheduled for another two different sessions. You understand what I'm saying? It could impact the length of time the speaker has to do what they've come to do.
Oh, yeah, I understand as far as the program is concerned, it's going to have some impact.
And its impact that we couldn't control how long it might take.
Well, yeah, and a part of community engagement is to have, I would think, the community to feel a part of this process.
I agree.
And I see by giving the community an opportunity to provide input, we get them the opportunity to feel part of this process. Now, we have a guest speaker to come in. Certainly, we could limit the time frame for public comment, but if we even announce that prior to, I think the public may be understanding if we had to limit the time for them.
Or I had a suggestion, maybe the speaker, maybe you have this, I know this is out of order, but
You
you
have-
had the speaker go first.
There you go.
You had the speaker go first, because I certainly don't want the speaker to be held here
Right.
when they've come
Right.
from
Good
somewhere. You
idea.
have them
Yeah.
go first, and then I mean, you can still put a limit on the time, because we're going to have an opportunity to give extensive feedback, but have the speaker go first, and
Great
then,
idea.
I know we don't conduct board meetings that way, but that might be something we can do in this particular.
And those in attendance who are looking on from the public could benefit from the information the speaker provides.
That's
a great
right.
idea.
That's a good idea.
Because
Great
maybe
idea.
what they were going to say now, they don't share it because the speaker provided what they were wanting to know.
Right, great
You know,
idea.
So
When we do that, the speaker would go first. Great idea.
speaker would just go, yeah, and then they wouldn't.
But
They would
I would
appreciate it.
also like to see us encourage communication in between our meetings. We've got 2 weeks between meetings.
I guess.
You know, for somebody to have to hold what they want to say for 2 weeks, you know, I think we need to give them multiple avenues for communication.
Okay, I agree.
So that sounds wonderful. And did you have any other comments that you would like to add? They've all been wonderful so far, Commissioner.
Well, thank you.
I appreciate it.
I love to talk, you know that. Thank you very much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Commissioner
I-
Harris?
I think this is getting us started in the good direction. And as we continue to move in and garner more information and hear from other communities and as well as the resources that we want to participate in this process, plus the public, I think we can come out with some good recommendations to the full board. Yeah.
So I would like to ask what we plan for the next meeting.
So let me look at the next meeting. I would suggest that we either have a presentation from one of our league speakers, or at least by the third meeting, hear from Chief Fonstock. If and I've spoken with the chief, and she is more than willing and happy to come and participate and speak with us and about the things that I've mentioned. I approached her about that prior to the meeting, and she was more than happy to come and participate and wants to. So having one of those presentations and then opening up to some comments, as we talked about, after the presentation is done. And so, and whatever order we did it, whether we heard from a league speaker first or the chief, I would say would be good at this point, prior to going into the public input full session. So that would be my recommendation, to either do one or the other. Perhaps if one does, if one was not able to work, I guess we'd have to see availability.
Yeah, I would just recommend, Mr. Chairman, that if it's good with the committee, let you and I work on, let me work on having some conversation with the league staff and see what availability there is and what we might be able to do from a coordination standpoint from schedule. And then you and I can coordinate that, and you can share it with the committee members as to what we would look to try to do for the next meeting. I
Okay.
think it's going to take a little bit
That
of
would-
coordination time.
Thank you. Did you have anything else, Commissioner Harris, that you want to share?
No, I don't have anything else.
Well, I wanted to, before we adjourned, I just wanted to say that I'm excited about building upon what's going on in Fuquay-Varina, what's been going on. I'm excited about building on the work the chief has done. I'm excited about building upon the work that the department has done. I'm excited about listening to the public and addressing any concerns that they have. I'm excited about working with the two of you and Adam, and we live in a great community. We live in a great town, and I'm sitting next to two people with a lot of wisdom, and I appreciate and respect your wisdom. You've been in the community a lot longer than I have, and I appreciate that. And I appreciate the wisdom that you will bring to this committee. And I look forward to working with you both very much. And I look forward to our accomplishing our goal of bringing forth recommendations. I look forward to working with our chief of police, and I look forward to also listening to our speakers and learning from our speakers, because what I've learned over the years is that a lot of learning is listening and growing, and I'm excited about listening. So that is the business that I had tonight, and I wanted to thank the public for joining us. We want you back. We want you back for a lot of tonight was just organizing, but we all definitely want you back to come and join us. Wish you could be here with us, but definitely want you to join us, and definitely want to hear from you, and look forward to being with you again at our next meeting. With that said, we'll need a motion to adjourn, unless there's any other business.
So move that we adjourn, Mr.
Second.
Chairman.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.